Part after texture to identify the correct hair type that you have to look at is your curl pattern. All right. So your curl pattern, and this is another thing that people get mixed up. Sometimes people with a lot of hair in their head will think that they have a tighter curl pattern than they already have. It's just so many misconceptions about the type of hair that people have, and I want everybody to be informed. So when you're buying products or you're getting things done to your hair, that you know a little bit more, and that way it'll be a lot easier for you to get the things that you want done correctly, and also buy the right products to help you maintain the healthier hair. So again, let's go to the curl pattern. Okay, I also call this the torque pattern. Remember, you heard that first from me. All right, or I see it in magazines and TV commercials and things like that, and people using my words and my terminologies, but curl pattern is what we'll stick with today. So there's five basic torque patterns, not two or three that what you probably heard or thought, uh, and so or learned in school. So there's about five, and again, just like with texture, there's variations between all of these ones that you see. Okay, so there are five basic torque patterns. I'm going to get this a little bit closer so you can see it. And the first one is naturally straight. Notice too that on the little pictures that I drew here for you, that's a picture of a scalp and a hair follicle and a hair extending out of the hair follicle. That the follicle itself the is the part that actually holds the hair in. If you see here is where the hair is inside the head, okay? And however that is shaped is how the hair comes out of the scalp. So over here we got naturally straight hair, all right? The follicle is straight and the hair exits straight. To be able to identify the curl pattern, you have to look down at the scalp and see how it comes out of the head. How is it exiting that follicle? How is it coming out? Is it coming out straight or is it taking an immediate bend when it comes out of the head? All right. These curl patterns, naturally straight, naturally wavy, and naturally curly, when you look at those hair types coming out of the head naturally, not with no relaxer in it, not with any permanent wave in it or anything like that, natural hair, when that exits the scalp, it's straight. If you was to cut that person's hair really, really, really short, the hair is going to look straight. As it gets longer, naturally straight hair will stay straight. As it gets longer, naturally wavy hair will start to form a wave pattern, and naturally curly hair will start to form a curl pattern. Naturally curly hair, in my opinion, is the most difficult because on naturally curly hair, you have a lot of different types of curl patterns. It can be a really tight, springy curl. It can be a loose, loopy curl. There's a lot of variations of naturally curly hair. But how to identify it correctly is how it exits the scalp. The difference between naturally curly hair and naturally kinky curly hair is actually how it comes out of the scalp because both of them form curl patterns, some of them very tight and some of them loose, depending on your nationality and who your parents were. But naturally curly hair, when you look at it, coming out of the scalp, it comes out straight, and then it starts to form curl patterns. Naturally kinky curly hair exits the scalp with an immediate bend, and then it forms very tight, small curls along the strand. Naturally kinky wavy hair almost does the same thing, but naturally kinky wavy hair makes a bend when it comes out of the scalp immediately, but instead of forming loops, it forms small crimps. You won't see the very tiny little curls that you get around the hairline sometimes when you're dealing with naturally kinky curly hair. So there's a difference in all of those. And remember, another thing about these curl patterns is that on one head, you may have all of them. You may have a couple of different ones on one head. It depends on the person. Sometimes somebody may have naturally curly hair on the top of their head, and the back it might be kinky wavy. It just depends. It depends on everybody, and everybody is different. So because of that, though, because of the curl pattern being different on different people, and because the curl pattern is different in different areas of your head, depending on who you are, there could be variations in your styling techniques and the things that you use while you're doing a service on someone with different curl patterns in their head. Does that make sense? So I could go on and on all day about different things that you need to know about curl pattern, but for the series that we're doing right now, we're talking about hair and how to keep your hair in good shape. One thing that I am going to mention about the curl pattern and about how to keep hair in good shape is that the tighter your natural curl is, the more naturally dry it's going to be. That's one thing to always think about. Just because your hair doesn't have any chemicals in it or anything like that, if your hair is really tight curlier, the tight curlier that it becomes, the more naturally dry it becomes. And that's because of all the twists and turns that it takes. In another series, we'll talk about the construction of a piece of hair, but just for the sake of this video now, you have what we call a hair cuticle that is surrounding the outside of your hair, kind of like the scales on a fish. They're transparent, they're clear, and they overlap each other. Well, when a piece of curly hair is going around, it's twisting its circles and twisting all around, those hard cuticle scales on the outside of the hair, they bend up when it's going around a curl, which sometimes causes the hair to look more dry because it doesn't reflect light. Whenever the cuticle is flat, it reflects light and the hair looks shiny. If the hair is going over a curl pattern and those cuticles are lifted because of that, the hair will not reflect light and it will not look shiny. So sometimes naturally curly hair, naturally kinky wavy hair, and naturally kinky curly hair has the appearance of looking dry, but it isn't really dry. It just looks a little bit more dry because of the curl pattern. But it also can be damaged easier because of the curl pattern too. So we'll talk a whole lot about that when we get into hair conditioning. So I want you to pay attention to this paper now and the things that I said about it, because all the things that I'm teaching you right now, when we talk about hair conditioning and different types of conditioners, all this is going to matter. So I want you to look over these things. So when we do the last video, you can pull all three of them together and you will be very, very informed about uh, the type of hair that you have. Okay? All right, let's move on to the very next thing about the type of hair that you have is called your abundance or your density. These words mean the same thing, right? Abundance, density. It means how much, basically, right? How much. So I'm going to get this a little closer. When we're talking about abundance of hair, it's how many hairs you have per square inch of skin, or how many hairs are on your head. On average, every person has 100,000 hairs on their head altogether. But again, that is dependent upon a lot of things, on your parents or your DNA, right? It depends on, if you're sick, if you're taking medicines, and a lot of those other things. So we'll talk about hair loss again in another video. I have a lot of good information to talk to you about hair loss and the reasons why it happens and ways to prevent it and ways to fix broken hair. So we'll talk more about that in a later video. If you have questions about that, please leave me an email and I will leave the information at the end of the video. But again, abundance or density is how many hairs per square inch of skin, or how many hairs are on the head. And this is how we identify it. Your hair is sparse or light, it's medium or normal, or it's heavy. Now, these little blocks represent, where am I at here? They represent a square inch of skin. And those little dots in between are representations of hair. You can see on the sparse and light one that you can see in between each hair. So somebody who has sparse or light hair, when you look through the top of their head, you can see through it. You can see their scalp without even moving their hair. That's a sparse or a light abundance. Medium or normal, it means that when you part their hair, you can see their scalp pretty easily, but there's still a lot of abundance of hair, and that's normal. Heavy on the other hand here, heavy is when you try to, if you've ever put water on somebody's head or your own head and you can't feel it yet, you probably have a heavy abundance. So a heavy abundance means when you look at your scalp, you can't see it very well, right? You have so much hair that you can't even get to it. All right. So now normally the abundance has a lot to do with the color of your hair as well, even though it's mainly due to your DNA. But and this is just generalization, again, done in labs, that people who have naturally red hair have the least about a density on their head, about 90,000 hairs per square inch, and people who have black hair have the heaviest. So it's just dependent upon the color of your hair and also your DNA. Now, the abundance doesn't have anything to do with the strength of a product that you pick to use on your hair or anything like that. The only thing the abundance and the density has to do with your hair is actually how much product that you're going to need when you do it, right? How long the service may take, because if you got a thick, heavy abundance, of course it's going to take longer, right? The styling options that you have available, if you have a light abundance, there's certain styles you just may not be able to get. If your hair is real heavy, there's certain styles, again, you may not be able to get because your hair may not hold. So it just depends. Also, the abundance has everything to do with like application procedures, because you might have regrowth, you might have overlapping or something like that. So depending on your application procedure, you might need thinner partings, depending on how much hair is on the head. So those three things, abundance, curl pattern, and texture, are the main three things that govern the type of hair that you have. All right. So depending on the type of hair you have will have a lot to do with the kind of conditioning procedures that you choose to use, and also the type of conditioners that you choose to use. The other thing that has something to do with that is actually what caused your damage. I'm going to be going over this a lot more when we talk about conditioning, But just so you know, and preview on conditioning again, is that there's only a few ways you can damage your hair. You can damage your hair mechanically, which means that you pulled on it too much, you used flat irons on it too much, or curling irons, you braided it too tight. That's mechanical damage. Chemical damage, of course, is from chemicals, overusing chemicals, leaving them in too long, picking a strength that's too strong for the type of hair that you have. The last one is photochemical damage. And photochemical damage is damage from the sun, from the wind, from um, the heat in your house. Some people have radiator heat, some people have forced air heat. That kind of heat depends on, how dry your hair becomes. All right. So those are some things we're going to be talking about when we get into conditioning. We're also going to be talking about elasticity and porosity and how those things have everything to do with the type of conditioner that you pick as well. All right, so there's so many different factors when it comes to conditioning, and I know it seems like a lot, and it is. But once you learn all these things, it'll come to you quick, quick, quick. All you got to do is look at somebody's hair, or look at your own hair, listen to the things that you learned in this video, and you'll have a lot easier time trying to figure out what to use for your hair. Another video that we're going to do to back these series of videos up is a product knowledge video where I'm going to actually go into shampoo ingredients. I'm going to go into conditioning ingredients so you can pick conditioners and shampoos easily, eat more easy. All right, so there's, for example, shampoos, again, there's only 2 ingredients in shampoos that you need to be concerned with: water and whatever cleans it. The rest of the stuff that's in shampoos gets washed right back out because that's what it is. A shampoo, it's a cleaner. All right, so the things on the bottle besides the first 2 ingredients are just things to sell it to you. Does that make sense? All right, so I'll talk a whole lot more about that when we get into shampooing in the next video. And the next video after that is going to be in conditioning, and we're going to be talking about that. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope the information has helped you. Again, if you have questions, please email me, pgh.multicultural@gmail.com, or you can also get to us from our website, which is pghpmca.com.